are something that we'll look to tear down now. Dr. Vivian Chern Shnaidman from Jersey Forensic Consulting, and that's jerseyforensicconsulting.com, is with us today. Dr. Shnaidman is an expert in the application of psychiatry to legal matters. She is known for her appearances as an expert on TV and has provided expert testimony in over 50 published court cases. She is a medical doctor, board certified in psychiatry and forensic psychiatry. And in addition to her forensic work, she maintains a boutique clinical practice. You have the book over here. You can give me the book. Her publications include the practice manual, Forensic Psychiatry, A Lawyer's Guide, as well as a couple of novels, which I want to ask her about, including Loosening of Associations and Homicidal Intent. Dr. Shnaidman went to medical school at the Sackler School of Medicine, and she's a graduate of Bryn Mawr College. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. It's a fascinating topic. I mean, I don't even know where to start.
Let's start with what is forensic psychiatry.
Tell us a little bit about it, because
Okay.
I think the extent of forensic type thought sort of starts and ends with CSI, or a TV show, for a lot of folks out there. So maybe you could fill in some of the details in between, please.
And I have to tell you, I used to be addicted to those shows before I became a forensic psychiatrist. And then I learned that in real life, it's not really that exciting. Although I was at a conference recently, and as I was walking down the hall, I heard somebody on the phone saying, "So did they identify that body?" And that was really cool. But forensic psychiatry is the application of psychiatry to legal matters. So anytime there is any whiff of somebody being crazy in any kind of legal case, they can call in a psychiatrist for an expert opinion. And for almost any kind of case, there is some kind of legal precedent. So whatever the case might be, some intrepid attorney can look up the case law and say, oh, can we use a psychiatrist to somehow manipulate this case in our favor? Or is there a way to ask a psychiatrist for an opinion to come out with a kind of ruling that might be favorable to our client or that might help our client? And it could be anything. It could be criminal, could be civil, could be in one of those kind of shady is the wrong word, but gray areas of the law, because there's a lot of things that are technically civil or criminal but seem to be overlapping.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my work, I do a lot of both. I work with criminal cases, I work with mostly civil cases, but a lot of the civil work that I do is kind of in that gray area, because I do a lot of work in the public sector, a lot of work with, in New Jersey, it's called the Division of Child Protection and Permanency, which is where they remove kids from their parents. Oh. I do work with estate lawyers, where somebody dies and leaves a lot of money, and then everybody fights like vultures over the spoils, and somebody has to figure out, what was the person thinking when they wrote their will. So there's a lot of different areas where psychiatric opinion kind of comes in handy for the attorneys that are working with the case. So there's a lot of different areas. I worked with sex offenders for 10 years. Kind of a big block of my life that we
can go there at some point. We can ask about that.
You can ask me about that.
We can ask about that at some point. Is it always the lawyers who make the decision that we want to bring a psychiatrist in, or does the court do it sometimes?
The court does it. Often the court does it. The court orders an evaluation. A lot of times an attorney will say, I think we need to bring in a psychiatrist. They make the argument that their client has this or that legal standing based on a psychiatric issue. So they'll ask for an evaluation.
It's interesting, though, what I find actually is interesting about this is and I would never have thought this, is the civil side. Because when you think of like forensic, really anything, and maybe it's because of the TV shows, that probably has something to do with it, a lot to do with it. You tend to think of the criminal side, but as you're starting to point out some of these areas where on the civil side where this pertains, I'm starting to run through in my own head like all these various circumstances where makes sense where you would have somebody give an opinion, an expert opinion about why something might go in a specific direction versus another direction, or a thought process, that kind of stuff.
Well, you know what's really interesting is that most criminals don't have any money.
Okay.
It seems it.
Unless I guess they're bad criminals if
Yeah.
Well,
they're not doing their job.
Yeah.
so well, I guess the rich criminals don't get caught, so
Yeah,
they don't
there you
need
go.
to have money. They don't need to call in a psychiatrist.
Right.
But in the general criminal world, they're not asking for psychiatric evaluations. They're just, entering into their plea agreements and they're
Okay.
moving on. But in the civil arena, there's a lot more money at stake. So there's a lot, many more opportunities for asking for a psychiatric expert.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So I think that's why it plays out that way.
I bet. Do you think, and then this is just sort of off the cuff, I'm curious, do you think that on the criminal side, that a type of psychiatric evaluation might be very beneficial? Would you like?
Oh,
Let's assume that it was more available. Let's take money off the table.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I talk about that in my book. Like, I think that, this is something that is very important to me, that the law in this country assumes that everybody has the same capacity for distinguishing right from wrong. And that whenever somebody makes a choice to break the law, they've done that with the same ability as everybody else. Right?
It's not the case.
But that's
Right.
really never the case.
Sure.
So ideally, you would bring in an expert in psychiatry in every single case to see where on this continuum of the ability to make a rational decision does each person fall. And then you could make, design your punishment accordingly. But that almost never happens. You either have somebody has a full ability to make a decision, a right or wrong decision, and chooses to break the law, or they're completely not guilty by reason of insanity. Mm-hmm. And there's something else called diminished capacity, which comes up every once in a while. For the most part, it never enters into the equation.
Do you think that that in terms of a law and order mentality that exists very much through society, that's something that could ever come about, where there would be just, in the same way that we have a court system that allows a defendant to defend him or herself in a criminal action, just as part and parcel of that circumstance, there would be psychiatry involved?
So that's a very interesting question, because when I was researching the book, I found out that in other countries, especially in Scandinavia, when somebody comes into the courtroom and they look crazy, the judge says, "Your guy is crazy, go get a psychiatrist." Like, it's the judge's job. Mm-hmm. Here, it's not. Here, it's basically the defendant's job. So it's the defendant's lawyer's job, because
it's the defendant's job to say, I'm crazy. I want a psychiatrist.
It's an affirmative defense.
Okay.
For somebody to say, I'm crazy and I did this because I was crazy.
It's interesting. You wouldn't necessarily think that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look,
Right.
3 years of law school, they didn't bring that up.
You weren't there that day?
I was absent. Well, I was more of a tax business guy than a criminal. I did my criminal procedure class, and that was the last time. But from the civil side, are we talking mostly estate and matrimonial matters, or is it the guy who drives up on the other guy's lawn and gets sued for running over his dog or something?
I've never had a case like that, but
I guess a tort case as opposed to like an estate matter.
I think that theoretically there could be cases like that could bring in a psychiatrist. I've never been involved in one just like that. Mm-hmm. But you said earlier you might ask me about my most interesting case.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
So yes, it was a tort case, and it was this. It was actually a horrible case, but it was two dead guys suing each other.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Okay, I gotta
because
figure that out.
I mean, that sounds.
And I don't want to give away too many details because it was kind of local, but it was a murder-suicide.
Okay.
And what happened was one man murdered the new boyfriend of his former mistress.
Okay.
And then committed suicide. He shot this other man, and then he set himself on fire.
Oh.
It was
Okay.
a horrible story,
I mean,
right?
that's-
And then the family of the murder victim sued the estate, basically the family of the murderer, the suicide victim, for wrongful death. And the insurance company of the murderer, suicidee, said that this was an intentional act and they wouldn't cover it. But in New Jersey, there's case law that said that if, I'm going to paraphrase it, but it said that if the intentional act was the product of being mentally ill, you know how they write things in these fancy words, if it was a disease of the intellect of blah, 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 but what it meant was if he was crazy when he did it, then it's not an intentional act. And I was hired to see, was he mentally ill when he did this? Well, you know, yes, of course he was mentally ill when he did this, but there is a way to, and you know, it's one of those circular logic things. You can't convince everybody of this, but there were a lot of records. There was a lot of information that this man had been treated for mental illness for a long time. They'd been on medication, that people knew that he was mentally ill, that there was a family member who was a psychologist who the police conveniently lost her interview and testimony and everything. But there was plenty of information. So that was a civil case in which would have been a criminal case if he had survived, but he didn't survive. So, you know, there's all kinds of weird cases, and I hate to say it's my favorite case because it was a horrible tragedy, but it was, you know, from an intellectual perspective, it was you know, really interesting.
Sure, absolutely.
You know, and I learned a lot from it.
How does one, you're a medical doctor.
Yes.
You went to medical school.
Yes.
And at some point you decided you were going to go into psychiatry.
Yes.
Did you decide with the idea of I'm going to be a forensic psychiatrist, or was it psychiatry before forensic psychiatry, or
I'll
how
tell you
does that
something
work?
funny. Okay, so first of all, I took a class in 10th grade called forensics, which was like debate and speech, and I really liked it because you had to like persuasively speak and convince people of things, and I knew that I was good at that. And then I was a psychology major as an undergrad, and I decided, and also like my parents are immigrants and you could only be a doctor or an engineer, which is a whole other thing. But so I was a psychology major as an undergrad, and I wanted to be a psychiatrist, and I wanted to be that kind of psychiatrist that goes to the court and explains to everybody what happened. I didn't know that that was called a forensic psychiatrist because they didn't have all those shows in those days.
Right.
But it all kind of fell into place. So I wanted to do this for a long time, and I also wanted to be a writer. Oh. So it all kind of fell into place. But it's also, you know, one of those be careful what you wish for things, because I have what I like to call my boutique private practice has about 800 patients. So, you know, I'm pretty busy.
Well,
But,
that's a good
yeah.
thing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that seems like a lot. Yeah, you're right. Be
Yeah.
careful what you wish
Yeah.
for. But it sounds like you love what you do every
I
day.
do. It's
Yeah.
really fun.
So tell us about the writing process. You've written the book, Forensic Psychiatry: A Lawyer's Guide, is obviously is a book that's written as a how-to, I suppose, for lawyers.
Yeah, so I wrote this book because I think that when a lawyer hires a psychiatrist as an expert, he or she needs to understand what the expert is talking about, like in more detail than just skipping to the part that says recommendations, or just reading the opinion part. So, right, you're a lawyer, so that would be good if you
To have more knowledge, sure.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So I thought it would be a really good guide for lawyers, and there's no such thing, except now for mine. So, you know, I thought I could probably get it published, which I did.
Well, there
So it
you
was like kind of a win-win situation. And it's pretty readable because I wrote fiction first, so, and I write a lot of reports, so people can read it. My mother read it. She said it was readable.
There you go.
So you think fans of just forensic stuff would be interested in that?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah,
I
it
think
seems
so.
It seems it.
Is there
What's the easiest way to
get it?
to get it? Can you?
You can get on Amazon or
Okay.
any online. I think that their website also, it's available on the Elsevier website.
Okay.
The imprint is Academic Press.
Okay.
They all give the same discount. It's kind of expensive. I didn't set the price, they did, but.
Well, that's
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's for
out
them
of your
to do.
hands.
And the print is also kind of small. Like my father and other people's fathers all say the print is too small.
That's why I have
All
my
right,
glasses.
reading glasses,
Well,
and
this was
we'll make it work.
this may be the most
Interesting.
guest that we just can't keep up with. You know, this may be the one guest that we've had that's just she's too smart for us, and
a
we
little
need to
bit
give
too,
up,
at
run
least
up the
for
white flag.
myself, maybe. But
But you're certainly, and again, you know, you don't want to spend too much time with us because you'll quit your practice because you can't
yeah,
imagine.
I've seen it all.
You can't
I'm outta here.
imagine, right?
Oh, you guys,
You
believe
can't
me.
imagine the dark corners.
Believe me, I told you I worked with sex offenders. You guys are fine.
Yeah, that might have to be a whole
Well,
other
yeah, we've been
other topic for the show.
Yeah,
just
that would-
because
that would actually
we'd
be
love to hear about
Yeah,
I
this,
would
like
be
the
happy to.
psychiatry.
Love to have you
behind
We might have
those
to
things.
practice first without the cameras on, and then you tell me what's okay for prime time.
Yeah, well, no,
Okay,
sure,
well,
yeah,
all you kids that are home from school today, you don't
Yeah.
turn
Go
off
back
the,
to school first.
Right, turn off the
Yeah,
set.
I'm sure.
All
It's
right, well,
dark.
thank you, and we will definitely talk about having you back at
Thank
some
you
point.
so much.
Yeah, we
Pleasure.
appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
Speaking of the
Great.
brain, fun facts about the human brain.
Okay.
Do you know that the brain uses more energy than any other organ?
Yeah.
Okay, people know. That's,
Yeah, that's
kind of
pretty
intuitive,
basic.
right?
I hear
20
Jake say it all the time.
20%.
It's my command center.
But it's 20% of the body's energy supply at all times
Is from your brain.
Is being used by the brain.
Yeah,
So-
hey, use 30. I mean, it's got a lot to do as far as I'm concerned.
And you know that thing about how what's the total brain capacity that people use, and they say, oh, people only use 10% of their brain.
You know, I don't know how anybody could know any of that stuff.
I don't
I mean, I'm sure that maybe they do. It just seems so
Science.
complicated.
The
to
thing
me.
said that, and this is from Mara the intern. Scientists are in agreement that we use more than 10% of our brains, but no one really knows how much.
Okay.
So,
I use like 3.
yeah, I think I'm
well below 10%.
I have like 2 neurons that
Yeah.
rub together, and that's about all that's left.
It's
And then
like
the
2
last
cricket
thing,
legs. It's like,
but it's like 2 of a very old cricket.
right.
But the last one that I just want to get out there is that your brain creates enough energy to illuminate a 25-watt light bulb while you are awake.
Like if I plugged it in
If
somehow,
you
it
could
would
somehow create a
amount of
source,
energy.
a flow, it's got enough power to light up a light bulb.
it's fascinating. It'd
Yeah.
be kind of neat if you could
You
somehow.
could be your own light source
You need a light bulb though.
and a wire.
Like you shove it in your ear or something.
something,
Like how do you do that?
I don't know.
No, I get it. I understand the idea behind it.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah,
fascinating.
get
Well,
us out of here.
Yeah, so anyway, I have just a quick thank you to the president of the FOP in Delaware County. He had an interesting story for me. We always talk about first responders. And he said, hey, listen, in the idea of talking about criminal type things and activities, I thought this made sense. We always ask you to keep in mind of those folks who are helping out in the community. And he said, this is the reason why we need to keep our eyes on them and make sure that they're doing okay. And he told me this very interesting story about a young police officer knocks on the door of a house, decides for whatever reason to move out of the way of the front door, and as soon as he does it, big shotgun blast right through the door. This is what these people are facing a lot of times on their day-to-day. Most of us don't have to deal with that on a day-to-day. So please, when you see the firefighter with the boot, throw in a few bucks. Please take care of those folks and make sure that you are being as good to them as you can. They're out there working even when you don't need them. So we'll see you out on Main Street. Thanks everybody for watching, and don't forget to check us out at raceonmain.com. Thanks.